The Kansas City Chiefs are coming off their third Super Bowl appearance in the last 4 years and their second Super Bowl victory in that time span. They appear primed for another big year with Andy Reid at the helm and Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. But should they still be the favorites in the AFC after an offseason in which you've seen a lot of talent added at the top of the AFC, a conference that has been highly competitive over the last several years? Should the Chiefs still be the favorite? We'll look at that today. That's what we're talking about here on the inaugural edition of Pro Football Daily, your daily source for football news and analysis. I'm your host, Jordan DeLugo. Welcome in. Really fired up to be launching this channel. Really appreciate y'all for being here. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. Let me know what you think about what we have going on. But right now, again, talking about the Chiefs and if they are still the top dogs in the AFC. The Chiefs are obviously still going to be one of the top teams in the league, right? Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they have a talented offensive line. There's talent all over the field. They upgraded at right tackle with Jawan Taylor this offseason. I think that's a really big move. A guy that has second round pedigree, really athletic offensive tackle coming over from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he's going to help them at right tackle. The question here for me on their offensive line, where is Donovan Smith after a down year in Tampa? They just recently brought him in. He's been a starter for nearly a decade over for the Buccaneers. He played through injuries in 2022, which I think can explain some of his issues. And I think that you can at least expect some regression back to his normal steady level of play at left tackle in 2023. So I think you can feel pretty good about that spot. Overall, I think the offensive line is loaded when you look at it with Jawan Taylor, with Donovan Smith, with Creed Humphrey at center, Trey Smith at right guard, Joe Thuney at left guard. They have a really solid group up front protecting Patrick Mahomes. The receivers, they're led by Travis Kelce, who's an absolute stud. We all know one of the most talented tight ends of all time, one of the most productive receiving tight ends in league history. They've got a bunch of guys, in my opinion, that can get the job done at wide receiver. And look, going into the 2022 season, this was, the Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill. How are they going to be able to survive on offense without having their most explosive player? Well, you saw they went ahead and won the world championship without him last year. Now, they did lose Juju Smith-Schuster. They did lose Mecole Hardman, but they've still got Kadarius Toney, who is excellent when healthy. Obviously, Travis Kelce is still leading the way. MVS, I think he's a really good vertical threat for you, but I think he showed even more down the stretch, a guy that can be a little bit more than just a vertical threat for you. Sky Moore is really talented going into year two, dealt with some injuries last year. And I'll tell you what, I think Rashee Rice out of SMU, their second round pick in 2023, I think that was a great pickup, an underrated draft pick around the league. I don't think enough people are giving them credit for that one, because when you look at Rashee Rice's athletic profile, his ability to extend away from his body and go get big time catches, that catch radius is massive. He played through injuries in 2022, not something I hear a lot of people talking about. So I don't think you saw Rashee Rice at his very best in 2022. I think that affected his focus at times. You saw some focus drops, but I think when you pop on the tape and you see him fully healthy and at his best, this is the type of receiver who can be a yak monster, who can be a possession guy that you throw the football up to. He can be open when he's not open, right? That type of guy that can just go up and get the football even with defenders draped all over him. I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to really like having him to throw the football to, and I think he'll eventually develop into their second option, potentially, at receiver. Obviously Kelce is listed as a tight end, but he's their top receiver, right? So I think between Kelce, Rashee Rice, Kadarius Toney, MVS, Sky Moore, and then they also brought in Richie James, who was really productive for the Giants last year. Justin Watson can play too. I think they have more than enough options, and obviously the elite talent at tight end for Patrick Mahomes to have plenty of options to get the ball out and have an effective passing game, more than an effective passing game, an elite passing game. Let's be honest. They have a talented backfield as well with Isaiah Pacheco, who we learned was dealing with injuries throughout the 2022 campaign. He was still running through, past, and around pretty much every defender that he came across last year, helping the Chiefs get to that Super Bowl and win the ultimate prize there. They brought back Jerick McKinnon as well, who's one of the most talented receiving backs in the league. And of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is still on the roster. And they brought in Deneric Prince as well, who's a talented back. I thought should have been drafted out of Tulsa. You know the way it goes with running backs. Sometimes they don't get their due in the draft. I think Deneric Prince definitely should have been a day 3 pick. He ended up going undrafted. So they have a million ways to beat you on offense. They can paper cut you to death. I think they can beat you deep. They can do a lot. And of course, Patrick Mahomes, an absolute wizard with the football in his hands. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, I think they have one of the best coordinators to ever do it, right? And Steve Spagnuolo. Chris Jones still at the very top of his game. You've got George Karlaftis up front as well. Going into his second year, he really came on down the stretch for them as well. The Greek freak. Charles Omenihu coming over from San Francisco. I think he is an underrated signing this year for them. And then they added FAU, Felix Anudike-Uzomah out of Kansas State, the local kid from Lee's Summit, right, to the mix in the first round at edge. I think they've got plenty up front, and they've got more depth beyond the guys we just mentioned as well. I really like their defensive front. I really love their linebacking core. Nick Bolton, I think, is one of the more underrated players in the league. This is a guy who's a tackling machine, incredibly smart, instinctive. You also got Willie Gay, who is an elite athlete at the linebacker position. They brought in Drew Tranquil from their rivals, the Los Angeles Chargers, and they have Leo Chenal, who they drafted last year as well. This is a really, really talented linebacker group. And how about all the youngsters in the secondary that balled out last year to help get the Chiefs to that Super Bowl? They're obviously led by L'Jarius Sneed, who's a corner that can do it all for you. He's a great blitzer. He's a great run defender, very good in coverage as well. But they've got a bunch of talent behind L'Jarius Sneed, including Trent McDuffie, first-round pick last year, who I think is primed for a really big year two in Kansas City. They've got good specialists as well when you talk about punter, kicker, return. It's all there for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a very complete team. And when you have a complete team that's coached by a living legend in Andy Reid, a defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo, who is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, they have the best quarterback on the planet right now, the best tight end on the planet, the best interior defensive lineman, at least in the AFC, and they have talent across the board. So when you look at this roster, I'm not sure how you could come away being anything but impressed with what they have going into 2023. Certainly one of the top teams. Now, there are other teams of note in the AFC. They are not the only power, right? The Bills reloaded this offseason, and so did the Bengals. The Jaguars have the potential to take down anyone with Trevor Lawrence. The Jets could be dangerous with Aaron Rodgers joining a team that has talent across the board. But for me, the Chiefs are atop the mountain for a reason, right? And the biggest 2 reasons, it's Andy Reid, it's Patrick Mahomes. I think they have the best quarterback and head coach combination in the NFL, plain and simple. But I do think there's some teams that could be big threats. I think for me, the Bengals and Bills are the biggest threats on paper. No surprise there. And I loved what those 2 teams did in the draft as well. The Bills, they landed Dalton Kincaid, who I think can be an offensive engine in the passing game, a guy who you can just target over and over and over again because he has tremendous hands, he has tremendous feel for zone coverages, he can beat man coverages sink his hips and explode out of breaks. I'm a huge fan of Dalton Kincaid. They also landed Osiris Torrance out of the University of Florida, an offensive guard who I had as a first-round talent. They got him in the second round. And so you look at what they did on offense to kind of shore up the offensive line and then add a real difference maker at the tight end position to complement what they already have, with Dawson Knox, with the rest of that receiving core. I think they're going to be a really tough out. I think the Bengals, they might be the scariest squad. I think that as much as the Bills have such a steady group, they have Josh Allen, who is one of the most difficult quarterbacks to deal with. I really believe in the Bengals. They drafted really well. They built up that defensive depth with Myles Murphy, with DJ Turner, with Jordan Battle. They got these guys at values for me. Myles Murphy late in the first round, unbelievable value. DJ Turner, I had as a borderline first round pick. This is a cornerback who plays with insane fire, really, really great physicality. comes in a smaller package, right? But he runs a 4.26 40. You see the speed, you see the explosiveness. I think he's going to really help out their secondary. And Jordan Battle was one of the most underrated players in this class out of Alabama. This is a starting safety in the NFL. So I think you have 3 future starters right there. They also added Charlie Jones out of Purdue, who was, again, I've said it a lot, underrated. This was a guy who, in the Big Ten, going up against all these NFL corners, not a single one of them really was able to stop Charlie Jones at Purdue. They also added Andre Yoshivas out of Princeton, who is an unbelievable athlete. He has big, big potential. So I really like what the Bengals did. I'm not sure what Joe Mixon's status is going to be, but they landed a quality replacement, in my opinion, in Chase Brown. They have some more talent in that backfield with Chris Evans and a couple others. And I have all the faith in the world in Joe Burrow. That's kind of what it comes down to between the Bills and the Bengals for me. I just have faith in Joe Burrow getting the job done in crunch time. I think that he has just got ice in his veins. They call him Joe Cool for a reason, right? And we've seen him go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and come out on top. The Bengals had won 3 straight contests against the Chiefs before that AFC title game last year. So I think that they are the biggest threat to the Chiefs. But again, I ultimately give the Chiefs the edge this year. I think they have more unstoppable forces than the Bengals and than any team in the league, quite frankly. I give the edge to Andy Reid, to Patrick Mahomes, right? I do really like what the Bengals have, coaching-wise, Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo, very good. But Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, I don't think you can get better than those two. I don't think you get better than Patrick Mahomes. I do think the Bengals are very well coached. I do think they have a great quarterback, but I just think the Chiefs have just a little bit of an advantage right now still with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and company. So for me, the Chiefs are in fact still the top dogs. I think you got to look at that head coach and quarterback combination, and they're just too much to deal with. And they have a complete roster, complete coaching staff beyond that as well. And they have the experience of doing this multiple years in a row, right? 3 Super Bowl appearances in the last 4 years, 2 titles in the last 4 years. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are still the team to beat in the AFC and in the league. Thank you so much for tuning in here to the inaugural edition of Pro Football Daily. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit that like and subscribe button. Really appreciate your support. Have a good one.